Excellent.
There we go.
So we're talking about East 104
Yeah.
Street.
Right. So, yeah, ultimately, Ray's on there, and he figures out a way to really make it to sell the idea that, as I said before, 4:30 in the morning, we just finished, 6 sets playing in some New York club. It's the mid 70s, early 70s. And this is something that I just remember from growing up. And you just be hanging on stage, waiting for the sun to come up, and you just playing some nondescript, sort of groovy, chill piece of music.
Man.
And so, yeah, it's interesting what you can achieve when you remove things like a calendar and time clock, and you give people a couple of weeks to really think about their parts. The whole album benefited from that and allowed us, as you said, to go fusion, prog, straight ahead rock, fantasy mixes like for, Dance with the Spores,
Right, yeah.
It just crazy ideas we were able to really run with because we had the time to do it. And that was really the theme. So it wasn't an album that had a theme that was all about Mars. There was nothing like that. The actual
I like
theme,
the story though, when you said that it was like that mankind is trying to, immigrate to Mars, but there's these elephants that are fighting back for their land. I like that concept. I'm like, I don't know, but has Joe been smoking something? I don't know. But it's cool,
Well, we write stuff. I should show you, like this here, Crystal Planet,
Right.
comic book. My writing partner at Satch Tunes, Ned Evett, we write lots of stories, and we're working on a book right now. And one of the stories of the short stories in the book is the Elephants of Mars story.
Okay.
And it's really great to have a story. I remember when I brought in the song "Flying in a Blue Dream," and I had told John Kunerberry, my co-producer, what the song was about. And we're sitting in the studio one day, and the song really just had the acoustic guitars. It had my bass, and it had some guide drums on it, and that was it. And I was standing there getting ready to add some crunchy guitar for the end. This is back in the days with tape, and the tape is just sitting there on the machine. We hadn't really queued it up, and we're having a problem with RF interference. And every time I turn up my volume control, I get either a taxi or a radio or a TV station or something. And we're just sitting there thinking, oh God, how are we going to fix this? And I turned it to one level, and all of a sudden we hear this little kid talking. Now, because John Kunerberry knows the story about the song, that it was about me having flying dreams as a little kid, he looks at me, I look at him, and he just pushes record. And we just sit there and we listen to this little kid talking. And if the reel was at the beginning of the reel, right? So, and a reel of tape holds about 15 minutes music max, and there's leader tape in the front. So you never, generally you let it go for about a minute to make sure the tape is really tight before you start your track. This is old school shit. No one cares about this anymore. But
I've done records with in tape. I've seen that, so I know. Yeah.
So this recording starts, and all of a sudden you hear this kid talking, and he's talking about something. We have no idea what it is. Sounds like it's an old TV or live radio broadcast from the 40s or 50s or something. And as soon as he stops, the chords come in, and we couldn't believe it. It was too good to be true. The timing of it worked out. Now, John never would have pushed record had he not known what the song was about. You see what I mean?
Right.
So as it relates to this new album, once everybody really got the story behind each song, I would send them a song and say, this song is about this. Elephants on Mars, 104th Street, where my dad grew up, all these different stories. They would let those stories sort of sink in, and then they would provide a performance that fit the story. And that, I think, made the album really shine, that everyone had this sort of personal touch to their performance.
Yeah, you've always done that. You've always had like those kinds of concepts or mini concepts on your albums. I've noticed you've always had that, and that does make a difference, you know. And because even more so because your music has no vocals, you know. So because you know usually like the singer will sing it, you know, or whatever it's a song about, you know, or it's a love song or about a chick or whatever. But like when you have no vocals to talk about it, you know what I mean? It's even more important. So I think now I wanted to also ask you. You mentioned Flying in a Blue Dream, and obviously right before that you had done Surfing with the Alien, which you know it was a smash, you know, big album. And then you go and do Flying in a Blue Dream, and then on that album you sang on a couple of songs, you know, I Believe and Big Bad Moon. And
Yeah.
I was always wondering, like, was there a talk around that time with your management or whoever, like, oh, maybe, you know, you should go down that direction a little bit, and then you kind of like change your mind, or what was that behind that?
Oh, no, it's because from I was always in vocal rock bands, and the 5 years kind of leading up to me trying to be a solo artist, I was in a trio called the Squares, and I sang all the time. And I always thought that was really part of my thing, was singing. Even though I wasn't a lead vocalist, I was more of a background vocalist. I always felt that you could get so much more across with a good set of lyrics and a decent melody. Even sometimes you didn't even need a melody. You just had to have really great lyrics. And it would really help the playing, because I noticed that after the first 2 records I did 3 actually. There was in '84, there was the EP, extremely avant-garde EP. In '86, Not of this Earth, that was the first full-length album with drums and bass, of course. And then Surfing was the 3rd record. And so here I am, 4th time with Flying in a Blue Dream. And I just thought, you know, I can only play certain ways when it's an instrumental song. But I noticed that, like, you know, like if you're Slash, you can play a certain way because you've got Axl doing all this crazy vocal stuff.
Yeah.
And you wait your turn and then you just kind of explode. And I was thinking, like, wow, you know, I missed that part of being in a band with singing, because you could play differently. You could play more rhythm guitar and have your rhythm guitar be more prominent as part of the song, not just always backing up the main melody guitar. And then when the solo came, you could play in a different way.
Yes.
And so, and it's great to get out of a solo and back to a vocal. Whereas when you get out of a solo and then back to an instrumental melody, it's a very rough transition. You know what I mean? Because that melody that follows the solo can't be as loud as the solo. So there's always this sort of drop, you know?
Yeah.
So this is things that we've all worked on. And you know, you've worked with Mike Fraser, right?
Yes. He mixed some albums.
Mike is a genius, you know, and he knows all about this stuff. And we've had to play with that handoff between solo and the return of the guitar melody. And so I just thought, wow, it'd be great if I could put some songs in there, but I didn't want my audience to think I was trying to be a lead singer.
Right.
So I did vocals. Each vocal track had a different personality. I mean, I was just like a totally different person. So Strange, The Phone Call, Ride, all completely different songs, different vocal attitude. And it was great because
but then you never did it again, though. Or I don't know if I've mixed some songs, but I don't think you've ever sang on your records again since then.
Yeah, a couple. There was like a song on the eponymous release called Look My Way. Again, it was a bit of a comedy song. And Crazy from Time Machine, again, comedy song. Yeah, I didn't start singing again until I was in Chickenfoot. And then I was way in the background because, you know, I mean, when you stand next to Sammy and Mike,
you got Sammy there. So
Sammy's voice is like the biggest thing you've ever heard in your life, you know?
You don't have to worry about singing when you're with Sammy. So, yeah. So, okay. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, and also another thing, like now this is like fanboy Gus asking all these things about the past and all those things, because I was always wondering, you know. So man, when you did Surfing with the Alien, like I think and I think I read that in your book somewhere, that like your music was licensed to the Olympic Games or Winter Olympic Games, and is that true? That and I think that's how like the whole thing started for Surfing with the Alien, like the whole campaign.
Oh, no, actually, what happened was when that album came out, it exploded because of a few DJs in the US that decided to just play the album like crazy. In New York, in Texas, in Chicago, and LA, they just loved the album. And I mean, when I started that tour in '88, I was playing 2 sets in teeny clubs, 400 seaters. It was rough. Within the first about 2 weeks of that tour, which was not going well, I got the gig playing lead guitar with Mick Jagger. That was a really moment because suddenly I had this full page article in Rolling Stone as the guy that was playing lead guitar for Mick Jagger. And by the way, he's got this album that is storming up the Billboard chart. So this created another, sort of wave of excitement about the album. And it just continued. And I finished that first leg at the end of
What year was the Mick Jagger gig? Sorry.
88. That was, we did 2 tours in 1988,
Okay.
February and March, and then again in sort of late September through early November. And that was the Southern Hemisphere tour. And in between, I was doing, I made the transition from clubs to small theaters, playing like crazy. I mean, just we work so hard.
Wow.
But it really helped because the thing with Mick was a really big deal, and Mick helped me every time he could. Anything he could do for me, he graciously would help, promote me. He gave me a solo spot in the middle of his show, and he made sure that the whole team would get all my interviews done if people were asking for them. He was great. Nice. And and I had the support of radio though in the US and then in the UK was really big. And that was when there were a lot of rock and roll stations. Hip hop really hadn't taken over yet. So it was kind of a rock and roll world. And so that album.
Grunge hadn't even happened back then still. So
yeah.
Solos were cool at that time still. So.
Yes. It's just, you really can't explain it, because if you could, you'd think that you could replicate it, but nothing can be replicated.
No.
There's art don't ever replicate successes like that. So you just accept it and enjoy it, when it happens.
You opened up like a whole new avenue for guitar players and for guitar music with that record that went from there to being like, really hip, really cool for a number of years. And then like, the mid-90s going to like, okay, you can't play guitar solos anymore, to nowadays. And I mean, nowadays, I think it's a very exciting time for guitar music again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's important to remember that in the middle of the 90s, I started G3 because I was certain that the audience really wanted to see guitar solos. They just wanted to see them in a different way. Mm-hmm. They wanted to experience them in a different way. And the idea of the guitar hero making you focus on everything about them, all the drama and everything, was maybe the thing that was getting in the way of sharing. So I thought, what if the guitar players stopped being gunslingers? We hang out together every night, we share, and we celebrate the guitar with the audience, not pushing some kind of show at the audience, but we're celebrating with them. And it took a while to convince everybody that it was a good idea, but once we got it started, the audience loved it. So I always point out that even though people think the 90s were anti-guitar, actually it was the beginning of something super guitar-like, which was G3. And we've been able to maintain that. It's just a difficult thing to get off the ground. So that's why we only do one like every 3 years or 4 years.
Yeah. No, I know. I understand. Yeah. I mean, that was mind blowing when I first heard of G3. And also that was another kind of establishment, like a trademark. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, so many, it has been, mimicked and replicated with different guys, and everybody's like, a lot of people are trying to do their own type of G3 kind of thing, because it's a thing now, like, okay, you get a couple of or three guys, and like you say, you celebrate the guitar. And I mean, how do you feel about, where guitar goes today? Obviously the business has changed. We're living in a digitalized kind of era, obviously. So the format has changed.
Yeah.
New platforms have emerged.
What's amazing is that, we live in a hip hop and pop world. It's been that way for over a decade or more. And that's great. Music just keeps changing. Society always changes. What's really amazing is that while under this oppression, it's hard to work as a lead guitar player, there are guitar players out there that are doing things with the instrument that have never been achieved before in the history of guitar. They're playing 6, 7, 8, 10 string guitars with such intensity. It's totally mind blowing. No other, guitar heroes from the earlier generations can really hold a candle to what's going on right now. And it's just something entirely new. And they're doing it without the support of really, the world at large. It's just that small subgroup of guitar players, a couple of guitar magazines that will put Animals as leaders, on the cover.
Yeah.
But it's not like the late 80s or something like that. It's not like the late 60s, where you had power trios, where you had, Hendrix and Page and Clapton and Beck and, all that. It's a very different world now. However,
then too,
just the dexterity, the speed, the complexity, and the complexity of the compositions. It's really fascinating, really amazing. I find it really inspiring, even though I'll never get to that technical level, I find it very inspiring for me. It makes me want to go back and just, work on my thing even harder,
It is inspiring. Yeah. I also sometimes look at these, youngsters on Instagram or YouTube, and I'm like, okay, I got to practice a bit more. So I got to know how to do that, or at least, get inspired to maybe come up with something on your own. And I guess
support them. It's a good thing to support them, let them know, because they're, in a lot of ways, they're isolated. They're sitting there in front of their phone, playing this stuff that's mind blowing, but they're not, you don't see them on television, network television. You don't see them, they're not getting streaming numbers, like Drake.
Right. Yeah.
So, we're really talking about, they're just somewhere in the distance, some far. And so, if Gus G, says, hey, that's really amazing, they're going to feel good about it. So it's good to support,
I just think it's good. Yeah, of course. Yes. And I also think I always tell people when they ask me about this, I think we should look at all these platforms as tools, and it's great. You can be, it's cool, and it's okay today to be in your own corner doing your own thing. You don't need that big record label deal anymore, because it doesn't exist in the hard rock world anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are no magazines anymore there's maybe 2 or 3 left around the world. So in that sense, it's a good thing. And I see that, you can play whatever you can. Making instrumental music nowadays, it's a lot more hip. I shouldn't say hip, but it's easier. Like I remember, like in the late 90s, when I was sending my demos to labels, they were like, you should put a singer over that stuff. There's no market for instrumental music. Only Joe Satriani and Steve Vai can do it. That's what they would tell me. So, but nowadays it's not a taboo. That's what I'm trying to say.
It's wonderfully fractured. The great thing of the democracy of the internet is it connects unusual artists with their audience wherever they are in the world. So, and there's a big population out there, and they're connected to the internet, which means you can be playing the weirdest kind of music, and you might be able to find 1 million people out there who will become your fans for life. So, it's important not to be dismayed about that. And because when you see the numbers from your average pop star, it's, how do you compete with BTS or Billie Eilish? You really can't,
No.
And they're busy competing with each other, their own battles. But it doesn't mean that you can't have a wonderful career almost unnoticed by the press, you know what I mean, in your corner of the internet. And ultimately, I think if you get to live a good life playing the music that you like and playing for the fans that you love, that's perfect, because the pressures of being a pop star are pretty brutal.
Oh yeah. No, you're right. And like I said, yeah, if you can make a living playing the music that you enjoy, doing what you love, that's all you need, really. That's happiness. So yeah, on that note, I just want to thank you very much for taking the time, for being here and agreeing to be here on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to connect with you, to talk with you.
One of these days, you'll have to come out and join us on a G3 run. That'd be great.
Man, you know what? If that was to ever happen to me, it would be two things. One of the biggest dreams to come true. And second, it would be the scariest tour of my life.
That's the fun. They're all scary. That's the most. When you stand next to John Petrucci and trade solos, yeah, of course it's scary, but we love it. And the thing that people don't know is every time we finish a show, we walk off stage, the first thing we do is turn to each other and say, "How did you do that? That was so cool." Everyone's just like, "No, what you did was so cool when you did that." And that's what's so much fun about those tours. So yeah, it's exhilarating.
Wow, man. Yeah. Well, thank you. If you ever do another G3, I'll definitely, I'll happily join you and get my ass kicked every night. Yes. Count me in.
I'll hold you to it.
All right, Joe. Well, thank you very much, man. Enjoy the rest of the day there. Congrats again on Elephants of Mars. And thank you again for this interview, for this hangout. And speak to you soon.
Okay. Thank you. Stay well.
Bye.